All right. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Daralyse Lyons. Daralyse is the Chief Revenue Officer for Bucks County Beacon in, I believe, Pennsylvania. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All
Yep.
right. Cool. And yeah, we've been chatting a little bit. And so glad to have you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paula. It's really great to be with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is our first time meeting face to face. So I'm curious, as is the audience probably. Just if you could just tell us about your kind of career background and your kind of story in local media.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
interested.
Absolutely. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version,
Right.
so as not to bore you or the audience. But I am the daughter of a single mother accountant. So I grew up talking about interest amortization at the dinner table and went into business and finance early on in my professional life, and then worked in that realm for maybe a decade or so, a little over that. And then I transitioned. I've always been a writer. When most kids would get in trouble for staying up late, like watching TV, I would get in trouble for staying up late under the covers, scribbling in my journal or reading books. And so I realized in my mid 20s, like I don't like this finance thing. I mean, I'm okay at it, I'm good at it. It's not what I want to be doing. And so I left finance and transitioned to a career first in writing. Wrote books, I taught yoga, I sort of had this kind of like this just interesting life and professional digression. And then I got into journalism and worked as a journalist for, I think, a little over a decade, maybe 12 years or something like that. And then I saw a job opening for a business growth officer for a local newspaper. And I thought, I have this editorial background, I have this journalism background, I love to write, but I also have this sort of unique business history and financial history, and local news is in need of that. And I love networking and I love community engagement. So let me get this job. Let me just apply and see what happens. And so I applied, and I was hired as the business growth officer for a local newspaper in Pennsylvania. And within a couple of weeks, I was offered the job of publisher and executive director. I had to go home and Google what a publisher was because I did not know. That was not my background. But I took that on and I was there for a year and a half. And then in October of this year, I officially was onboarded as the Chief Revenue Officer for the Bucks County Beacon, which is a job that I just love. It feels tailor-made for me. I'm able to support really quality, deep journalism, rigorous community journalism, not on the editorial side, but through developing the funds to be able to keep that engine going. And so I love that work and have a lot more work-life balance now, just being a chief revenue officer as opposed to a publisher and executive director or full-time journalist. So yeah, I'm loving it, and that's kind of where I find myself today, is the CRO at the Beacon.
That's interesting. My wife has a financial background, and she's never what I would say passionate about it either. She worked in corporate, and then she's like the financial manager for our smallish town for a while. But it's interesting how you said you spent time there, and we were talking before we recorded how sometimes there's kind of a rift between editorial and the business side. So you like have this whole professional background, the business side. At the same time, you've been writing under the covers as a kid and everything like that. It's an interesting mashup. So I'll pivot already. I'd like to maybe talk on that about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. And even when I was working as a journalist, I was always a freelance journalist. So I had to do, or got to do, maybe depending on how you frame it, all of the income generating, revenue generating activities while also doing the journalism. And I feel like it is very helpful. The face of journalism has changed. It's different than it was 30 years ago or even 3 years ago. And so local news organizations in particular, if they're gonna stay alive and keep the doors open and the lights on, which is, you probably know, Paul, 2.5 newspapers are closing across the country every week. And that's a pretty dire statistic, especially given all that news provides to people. If news organizations are going to survive, I think they have to have a more entrepreneurial outlook and understand how to serve a critical function in the community and not just, provide relevant information, which a lot of news organizations out there are providing relevant information, but they're not doing a good job of telling their own story or getting themselves in front of the right people or making communities feel like they are indispensable. And so I think that in order for news organizations to really, really thrive, I mean, they may survive, but in order to really, really thrive, there has to be cooperation and collaboration between those of us at organizations who bring in the revenue and keep the money coming in and then those who keep the information going out, right? Like we have to be in conversation. And I see it really as a very symbiotic relationship. Like right now, I'm shout out to Cyril, our editor at the Beacon. He's been wonderful to work with because I'll be out in the community making connections, learning about different things on sales calls, et cetera. And sometimes I hear about great story tips or ideas and I'll bring them back to him. And I always tell people I'm not in charge of the editorial content, but there has been no defensiveness, no walls. So like, why are you bringing me this? Like Cyril's just like, oh, cool. That seems like a great story. Or, oh, I don't think that particular thing is for us, but like this angle might make it work or what, and so it's been really nice to be part of a collaborative environment and vice versa. He's come to me even just in my short tenure at the Beacon and said, what, I think, is there any way we can get money for this or that or the other thing? And because I want to do this series, but we don't have the resources quite yet. And so it's been fun. It's been really, really fun to feel like a true newsroom partner. And the Beacon's team is small, which allows us to do that. So we've got, Emily, myself, Cyril, and Allie are sort of like the full-time people. And then we've got a bunch of part-time people who are doing design work and, um, you know, HR functions and different things. I haven't even met the whole team. I've only been there a month. So, but it's been really, really fun.
Right. And yeah, I'll get into that in a second, because you are very fresh on the job. I'll hop into that in a second. I just also wanted to comment on what you were saying. It's funny, all the like most interesting people thinking about this stuff, they all say something on. You're right on track. It's like community,
About
but the community and the entrepreneurial mindset, and kind of thinking and collaboration. That's what I was looking for. Are super key. So it's interesting you think the same way. And sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. I agree. And one of the things that I had the opportunity to do when I was working as a freelance journalist was I joined the Philadelphia Journalism Collaborative, which is it was owned by Resolve Philadelphia and now it's housed under Temple University's umbrella. They are, I think, 31 different partner newsrooms throughout the city of Philadelphia doing collaborative journalism. And so being part of that like really helped me, I think, to see the value of collaboration across news organizations and also to see the value of just like it says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together,
Yeah,
something like that. And just kind of
yeah.
learning from other news organizations, the good, the bad, the ugly, has been super meaningful from my career. Hearing what other people are working on as they're working on it, as it's unfolding, and seeing what the end product is. And so I think for me, the value of collaborative journalism can't be overstated, both in terms of actually working on news projects and then collaboration within an organization and working with those that we're lucky enough to have as colleagues and coworkers and maybe even friends.
That's great. That's great. So I'll pivot back a little bit. And you said you've just been there a month, and you're probably the person on the podcast, the freshest in their position, which is great. I love different everybody's new at their position at some point. Could you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about kind of your day to day as a chief? I don't know if I've had a chief revenue officer, or at least not that exact title
Yeah,
on, and,
totally.
and also just a little bit about the Bucks County Beacon as an organization too, which you kind of touched on already. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was actually really funny. I had attended the Lenfest and Press Forward Philanthropy News Summit. I think it was maybe I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was in Philadelphia earlier this year. And I just happened to be on the Slack channel, and my boss, Emily Smith, put a question in the Slack channel like, oh, I'm looking for someone to do development work. And I wasn't even necessarily interviewing for the job, but I just reached out and said, well, I know a lot about development. I'm happy to meet with you and talk about it. And so we sat down via Zoom and had a conversation, and quickly in the conversation I said, I don't really think you're looking for just a development person. I think you're looking for a chief revenue officer. And she was like, yeah, can you do that? And I said, yeah, I can, I can. And so I am the first CRO at the Beacon, and hopefully I won't be the last. Hopefully the Beacon lasts many, many generations. What I do specifically is I am in charge of all of the income generating activities in the organization. So I handle contributed income, development work, and then I oversee the sales and advertising department, which is really just a department of two. It's myself and Allie, who works as a sales rep. And so it's been, I will say, I am kind of an overachiever and a little bit ambitious and super nerdy about this work. So I officially started at the Beacon on October 1st. But prior to that, There were a couple grant applications that we had wanted to get in, and so I just like, can I please work on these before I come onto the job? And so I was doing some work as of I think maybe mid-September or something. So I'm new, but I'm probably feel like I've been there for about 6 weeks. You asked what the day-to-day work for me is like. The Beacon is a remote first work environment. So I work from home, but I'm out in Bucks County visiting advertisers, visiting community members, networking, et cetera, maybe about once a week. And then the rest of the time, I'm at home sending emails and writing grant proposals and putting together, packages for like, hey, we want to approach this advertiser or that and strategizing. And so it's been great. I will say I am still adjusting to the fact that I was working about 70-hour work weeks and now I'm working about like 35. So that's been kind of great and also leaves me with a whole lot of downtime. The next part of your question was, what does the Beacon do? And we provide, the way that I frame it is we provide sort of rigorous community journalism that focuses on important issues in Bucks County and its surrounding, environs that are of relevance to Bucks County and beyond. So actually 20% of our readership is in Bucks County. An additional 30% is in Pennsylvania, but not in Bucks County. And then the last 50% is nationwide because there was an article that came out just today, the day of this interview, in the Philadelphia Citizen that was talking about how Bucks County really is it's almost like a case study for the rest of the nation, for how the nation is moving politically and how people are viewing things and different political issues. And so I feel like we're right in the epicenter of one of the most important counties in the nation in terms of politics and education and, religion and just different happening, race, et cetera. And so, yeah, so you won't read anything about community garden parties in the Beacon, but you will read about, community engagement and activism and what's happening with education and what's happening with development and how that impacts Bucks County residents as sort of a microcosm of the macrocosm. So, yeah.
And I was just looking it up. I'm in the Mountain West. I'm in Colorado. I haven't spent much time in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. So Bucks County is a little outside of, kind of between Philadelphia and Trenton, it looks like. Is that right? Am I looking at
Yep.
the right spot on the
Yep.
map?
And it's very
I'm
purple.
not entirely, yeah. I was gonna say, as an outsider from Colorado, once again,
Yeah.
I'm like Pennsylvania. I'm sure there's a lot of political stuff there. It's a very important state.
Yes. Yeah.
Even national politics, even. So that's
Totally.
interesting. I
It's
can see
it's
how you say, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's very political. It's purple. So there's, if you look at a map of how people vote, it's very blue and red and interspersed. And beyond that, Bucks County is rural, it's urban, and it's suburban. It sort of spans different kind of geographical typologies. There's vastly different levels of income, vastly different levels of education. So it's not homogenous at all, which I think uh, is interesting. And people in Bucks County will split their ballots if we're talking about voting. I mean, there's a lot of this Democratic person gets elected and this Republican person gets elected, and why is that? And so I find it fascinating. Again, I'm not on the editorial side, so I think Cyril would probably do a much better job of
right, yeah.
linking like all the ins and the outs of it. But just from the sense of community engagement and networking and raising revenue, it's fascinating to me the amount of diversity and the differences between people's concerns in the community, but also like all of this overlap and interconnection. So I'm super passionate about it. I could go on, but yeah.
That's yeah. That's awesome. I just wanted to get a kind of overview. So back to your kind of, you're the chief revenue officer, and you kind of detailed what that entails. And you're talking about grant applications. Is the Bucks County Beacon a nonprofit or
Great question. It's actually a
It
for-profit.
is a for-profit? Okay. I have people from both. I was just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, it is for profit. We have a fiscal sponsor, so we, can receive tax deductible donations
Okay.
through the fiscal sponsor, which is very, very helpful. But no, we're not a nonprofit. I came from a nonprofit newspaper, and I mean, I think all news organizations really need to be in the business of bringing money in if we're going to keep
Yeah.
the lights on and the doors open. But it's a slightly different paradigm to be at a for-profit organization.
Early in the podcast, I had Stephen Waldman on the podcast from Rebuild Local News. I think it was him, and he said for local news orgs that for-profits need to act a little more like nonprofits, and nonprofits need to act a little bit more like for-profits. I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly what he was talking about there,
I
but
agree with that
yeah,
wholeheartedly. Like as a for-profit organization, the Beacon is still mission driven. Like we are driven by our mission and our vision, and we are very invested in not having mission creep. Even as we expand, like we want to kind of keep the scope of our work to meaningful, impactful, local, reader-supported journalism. Yeah, nonprofit organizations. I mean, my organization before that was a legacy newspaper, 67 plus years in the making and in the operations. And I think for them, it really is about like, oh gosh, how do we set aside everything we think we know? How do we and get with the times and, be more
right.
relevant? And so, yes. So I think all news organizations are looking to really genuinely serve community and bring in enough money to keep doing that.
And so, as chief revenue officer, what's taking the cash register? What are the like different advertising? You have a fiscal sponsor.
Yeah,
You sound like
sure.
grants, yeah.
So advertising revenue, sponsorship revenue, different partnership initiatives like events and things like that, then grant applications, individual donations, foundation donations and support. And I think that that's really the bulk of it. I mean, I believe that organizations that don't have diversified ways of bringing revenue in are really vulnerable to extinction in this
Hmm.
particular landscape because like we see, I mean, newspapers 15, 20 years ago were able to support themselves wholly on advertising dollars, and now that is I think pretty impossible. Like I don't know of a single test case where that is the case. And I had some conversations with Lenfest and which is a very prominent organization that is supporting local journalism. And they've said like, yeah, like advertising is not, it's a necessary revenue stream, but it cannot be the only revenue stream. We have like, we don't have the Beacon is free to anyone who wants to read our content, but we do have some members who support our work who sign up for recurring donations or whatnot. So we have, reader revenue and that kind of thing. But I think that the more income streams you have as an organization, as long as those income streams are aligned with your mission and vision, the more sustainable the organization is going to be. So again, like, the Beacon does events, but we're not doing garden party events. We're doing like events where we're talking about book banning and different things of that nature and bringing people out in the community.
Yeah, the either Reddit or somebody on this podcast told me that their thoughts on it were somewhere between 3 and 7 sources of
Yeah.
revenue is the sweet spot. If you have less than 3, it's kind of dangerous. If you have like more than it was 7 or 8, you're getting spread too thin and trying to herd cats basically.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
love
yeah,
that. I never heard
yeah.
of that. I sort of instinctively knew that to be true, but
Yeah.
that's great. I'm going to use that now.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where I dug that up from. It wasn't my original idea.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, on the advertising piece, where I've seen it work with just straight advertising is just you need more scale. So I've had some folks on where it's a larger organization with like different newsrooms in a
Yeah.
geographic area, because then you can bring in the hospital groups and stuff that can talk to a wider area. Before this is about community news, local news.
Yeah.
Not everybody is at that scale. A lot of just a single publication going out. So it does. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, I've gotten out over my skis here. This is a good conversation. I know it's a good guest when we just go completely off script and go
Yeah, no,
elsewhere.
it's
It's great stuff.
unscripted. Throw it out. Throw out the script. We'll riff.
I do want to get to my, as I said in my notes, obligatory AI question because it's such a buzz everywhere. It's such a thing. And it's, people are all over the place on it, local media and business in general. Curious, just your overall thoughts. Most people I have on here are very against having it in any reporting or information gathering, honestly. But I've seen some interesting stuff of people using AI tools in the back end of the business or anything like that. So I'm curious your thoughts and if you guys are using any tools or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is essential. I also think it's highly problematic. I can't speak to, I know we're not using it for our reporting or writing at the Beacon because it becomes unoriginal. AI gets a lot of things wrong. It really lacks
Mm-hmm.
integrity, I think, to do that. So yeah, the Beacon, we're not using AI for reporting, but AI is, let's say, for example, in doing an interview, like this podcast interview, this conversation, you and I, Paul, right? We're recording this. And after the recording, if we want to quote anything, like hitting the transcribe button will be very, very helpful to be able to,
Yes,
like,
yes.
that is all AI. and you still need to go back and like listen to make sure that you get things right. But I feel like it's impossible really to do journalism these days without the use of AI. For example, in my work, we are sending out like email. We wanted to send an email out to people that have supported the Beacon in the past. And we use AI to do that. I mean, we create a spreadsheet with all of the readers and the donors, et cetera, and then hit a button so that it fills in the name and and all of that goes out to the general public. So I think AI is critical, but it really should not drive anything. It should be supportive in the same way that like, I have a washing machine at my house and I wash my clothes in the washing machine and it saves me a whole lot of time and effort and energy, right? Like I don't have to do it all by hand. I think AI should serve that function to just make things easier, more efficient, more streamlined, but certainly, um, yeah, we're not using AI to write anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. In my prior role, I know we used AI to like come up with headline ideas and things like that, which was really helpful. But at the Beacon, to be entirely honest, like we don't have a newsroom, so I'm not sitting in the newsroom seeing what the editor is doing or what our reporters are doing. I also think AI can be helpful with like data aggregation and map generation and those kinds of things, like just saving hours and hours of time. But again, you have to go back and fact check everything and really make sure that we're not putting out anything that is false because of the way that AI works. It often makes things up and fills in gaps.
I know. It's almost funny sometimes, but yeah.
It is, and emails like and you could tell like when I get an email that I know was AI generated, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there's the obligatory dash and like
The
here,
M dash, yeah.
yeah, the M dash and the way that this is worded is like lacks originality. I've seen the same phrase 15 times. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm not a huge fan of AI in that way, but even, I mean, Microsoft Word spell check there's AI components to that, or word count. Like I use word counts all the time to be able to, for grant applications, like, okay, 500 words, that's my limit. And so technology is critical, but I think we really have to like put the person and the voice and the originality back in news if we're going to be sustainable and really reflective of our community. I mean, if you in Colorado were to write about something and I in Pennsylvania were to write about that same thing, I mean, there's so much nuance of personal history and background that we bring to that, to that conversation, to our work. And I believe that AI lacks that. So yeah, I think that the more personal, the better. AI is critical to being able to make things more efficient.
Yeah, I think you have the right viewpoint on it. And I haven't had a single person on here that everybody says we don't use it for any writing or any reporting. But there's some super, like you said, there's interesting stuff. It's just I think AI is a branding problem. I think it was just some kind of software, like a new kind of software was called that
Yes.
instead. People would be more open to it, just all for what it can do on the back end and everything like that.
Totally. Well, and there's so many, I mean, AI is so diverse. It's a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. It's, everything
Yeah.
from spell check to like now people are using AI to write books and things without, doing their own kind of original writing. So I think that it's gotten a bad rap, but similarly, like the word democracy has a bad rap today, right? Like
Yeah,
as the word AI. So it's like,
yeah.
okay, just different things mean different things to different people and change over time.
I saw a piece, I don't remember where it was from, Pointer or Neiman Lab or something,
Yeah,
where it's like local news should avoid the word democracy just
totally.
because, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a crazy world we live in. Yeah, there are people doing interesting stuff with it. One of my favorites, I've shouted this out a few times to my friend Paul Myers, that was on the podcast. Shout out, Paul. He's going to text me after he hears this, I guarantee. But he runs a couple newsrooms in the Central Valley in California, and he's creating a platform called Lantern. And basically what it does, it collects all the data and reporting that his newsroom is collecting on city council, on all the government stuff, and putting it in a database. And then he's building a B2B product. So if you're coming in and you want to build a strip mall or an Arby's or something in town, and you need to know all the regulations and every dot you need to check, which is there's a lot in California also. You can pay them whatever it is, $500 a month, and it'll give you a detailed report of every single red tape you need to slash. And that money goes directly back into the newsroom and helps support the journalism. So there's like
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones I've discovered recently. He's a really interesting guy, and like I said, I'm sure he's going to be texting me once this comes out because he likes it when
That's
I shout him out.
so cool. One of the things that I found out about recently, and I think it might still be in the test launch stage, so I don't think it's out there yet to be used, but is there's a company out of California that's doing really interesting work to sort of certify originality. So like let's say for example in a newsroom, like you can install the software on your computer or install the software on your Google Drive or whatever. And then it will track like how much of this is original and how much of this is AI generated. And so they're looking to put that into newsrooms, both to kind of keep reporters like honest and people would opt into this, but also to so that the general public, because I think the public has lost a lot of trust in media and in news because they feel like, oh, news is fake or this is, like people aren't doing this work even though people are. So they then any piece that comes out that has under a certain amount of like AI support would be certified so that people would read it and know like, okay, yeah, this is I can trust this news source. I can trust that they follow journalistic principles, that the writing is original, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a company out of California, and I don't know where they are in the launch phase, but it's so interesting that we even have a
That's
need
cool.
for that we even have
Yeah,
like
yeah, right. Yeah, that's great. I missed one of my questions, so I'm going to backtrack a little.
oh, sure.
And you kind of talked about it. Do you have any for anybody else out there looking to make a move, maybe? Do you have any thoughts on moving from a publisher role into just a revenue role? So you're in editorial and I mean both, everything I guess before, and then
Yeah.
just over. And you kind of spoke about it a little bit. I'm curious. It's pretty fresh for you. So if there's anything that stands out, I'd like to hear that too.
So yeah, I love that question, and what I will say is that for me personally, it was a decision that I made because I wanted to be in a newsroom where I felt like I had more agency and more freedom and the ability to be more kind of creative and to really take ownership of a particular lane. I was reporting to a board of 9 that reported to a board of 23 in my previous role at the locals. So for me, it wasn't so much a change that I made because of the scope of work, even though the scope of work, I'm so happy that I made this change and it was a side benefit that the narrowing my scope of work has really streamlined things and allowed me to, I think, do not even a more comprehensive job, but a more sustainable job. Like to not be in charge of so many things is really, really nice. But for me, it was more about being able to take absolute ownership of the specific lanes that have been delegated to me and to work collaboratively with a small team that is growing and expanding and um that isn't bogged down by a legacy history. I think it can be very hard to work in an organization that has 67 years of ways of doing things. And I do have an entrepreneurial spirit and background. So for me, I think when I applied for this job, I would have taken a job in communications or in, revenue generation or in development or in any number of things, partly because I wanted to streamline my life and my work, but also mostly because I wanted to be able to work with a lot of freedom and flexibility attached and to make the kind of difference and the kind of impact that I love to make as part of anything that I'm working on. Like I really want to see positive results from my efforts and I don't want to feel constrained or hamstrung. So for me, what has been wonderful about this transition is being able to simplify my scope of work, but the reason for the transition was being able to feel like I could make the level of impact that I want to make and really drive sustainability within an organization with limited oversight and a boss who is, shout out to Emily Smith, amazing and gives me a lot of freedom and is such a wonderful thought partner. But I feel like I'm really making a difference. So I'm a big fan of going anywhere where a person feels passionate and driven and feels like they have the freedom and the agency that they need to be able to really make a positive impact in a way that's sustainable and doesn't cause burnout. So I'm a big fan of career transitions
Yeah,
that are a step up and a step in the direction of one's dreams and goals and
yeah.
life choices.
Well said. I could see the appeal there just when you were talking about it. I run my own business and it's not a large business and I'm kind of code switching all day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, if I could just do this, if I could just do the podcast or whatever, That'd be awesome. Just focus on that, but,
Yeah. Well,
one
so
foot in
do
front of the
you
other.
think
Yeah.
you really, really wanna do that? Because like, I like doing a few things. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that's true.
one thing I would get totally burned out, but with
That's
7, 8, 9 things, I can do it, and I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy the adrenaline and sort of being in the loop on everything, but it's not great for work-life balance or being
right.
able to have any margin or the openness and the freedom and the flexibility to, like, pivot in the moment if a new opportunity comes up or you get a interesting phone call or whatever. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm very, very happy at the Beacon. I hope to stay there, for the rest of my professional life.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great, and I'm sure you will. Oh, this I've been kinda asking everybody recently this question, and it's kind of a big question.
Okay.
Flash forward 5 years. Where do you the big part is, where do you see the local media industry in general headed? And also for yourself in Bucks County Beacon, like, where would you like to see yourself in the Oregon in 5 years, from 5 years' time?
Yeah, it's a hard question because there's so many
Yeah,
things tied up in it. Like what is going to happen with the political landscape of this country and I think that the plummeting trust in local journalism I'm hoping can be resalvaged and people can really start to see more and more the benefit of local media. I mean, there was a study that came out that showed that just having a newspaper in the community helps to reduce corruption by, I forget the exact percent, but it's like some very astronomical number. And so
yeah,
I think it might get worse before it gets better. I hate to be a doom and gloom person. I tend to be a eternal optimist, but I think we might have to see more newspapers closing their doors and a little more unchecked corruption and a little more, schools and school results getting worse and just people recognizing that social media, while a wonderful vehicle and tool, creates more and more echo chambers and does not provide us with the sort of multi-sourced information that good journalism does provide. So I think ultimately local news will sort of persist and survive, but I think part of what needs to change is local news taking a more active role in our communities, in having a visible presence in the community because people trust what they can see. And so if you're a news organization that is doing reporting on something that people can then go and like fact check that on their own or they know that that this thing happened in their community or whatever, or they trust that and they feel like it's vital. And if you have a local presence, I mean, I think we are all relationship based. And so yeah, I mean, I see local news coming back more and more. But I think we might have to continue to see things get worse before they get better. In terms of the Beacon and where I see the Beacon heading in 5 years, I'm hopeful. We do have some expansion plans, so I'm hoping that we can really realize those in a way that is sustainable for us and for the community and is informed by the community and where the community wants us to go. I mentioned that I think I've submitted like 3 grant applications in my short tenure at the Beacon. So fingers crossed that
in a
we'll get
month,
um
in a
I
month,
mean,
congrats.
yeah. Well, it's easy. I told you we're working on like 2 or 3 things now as
Yep,
opposed to
yep,
9. So
yep.
it's easier to do. So depending on whether or not some of those grant applications come in, that will shape some of the choices that we make and some of the scope of what we're able to do. But we want to continue serving the community and we want to continue doing that in a more robust way. So I think you'll see the Beacon having more public facing events, just continuing to generate more and more great content. We put out an amazing election guide. We had like 1,000 page views each. Sometimes I don't know the exact stats, but on each of the pages of the election guide, people were engaging and sharing and liking. And recently, we were called out by Moms for Liberty. The group, the head of Moms for Liberty, sort of said some things about her feelings about the Beacon, and we shared that on X now. It's called, I guess, instead of Twitter. And like that went viral, and so I think you'll see more of that. You'll just see more and more of people engaging with us and continuing the conversation in the community. And then our plans to expand and grow our reach and our readership, not just in Bucks County, but throughout Pennsylvania. And as I said, nationwide, because what is happening in Bucks County really tends to be a great predictor of what's going to happen throughout the nation. And even we have some international readers who are very interested in what's happening nationally and who look to Bucks County for as sort of a predictor of what's to come.
Yeah, I had who'd I have on yesterday on the podcast? Ed Arnold. He's the editor in chief of San Antonio Business Journal,
Yeah.
and he said every organization is a daily now, really. And I'm also thinking like every local is also a national, international
Yeah.
organization
Yeah.
too. But that's great stuff. I love it. I'm glad you have just two or three things to focus on, and that's
Yeah.
what needs to happen at a lot of places around the country. Get some focus, and that's the it's the chicken or the egg problem. You
Right.
need revenue to get people on to have them focus to bring more in, and it's just it's this
Well, and then we're
interesting
back
puzzle.
to the beginning as we were talking about collaboration. Like I can
Hmm.
focus on the things that I'm focused on because we have a great publisher and owner who's focused on operations, and because we've got a great editor who's focused on the editorial side of things, and a wonderful salesperson who's out in the community, and then coming back to me, and a design person who's able to do the design and the visuals and all of that. Our ability to work independently and come together and inform each other of, "Hey, this is what I'm working on, this is what I need to know, and here's the information that you need to know about what I'm doing." It allows people, I think, to specialize while increasing the scope of our impact and also taking off our typical hats. I mean, Cyril, it's wonderful. Like he's willing to be in the community, speaking and on podcasts and things that a lot of journalists, people with journalist backgrounds aren't used to having to do. And
Hmm.
frankly, some don't want to do, and they're going kicking and screaming into into this next era. And same for me. I'm out in the community raising revenue and bringing back editorial ideas and pitches or thoughts about like, oh, have you from an operational standpoint, like, oh, maybe we could do it this way, or maybe we could do it that way. Like, I think the more collaborative people can be, while also remaining focused and getting better and better at our areas of specialization, I think that is a great path forward, a great model, and I hope that the Beacon is able to continue that, and I hope that other news organizations can learn from our example because we're young, we're a 4-year organization, and so we have had to be really agile and flexible and very current in order to, keep things
Yeah.
keep things moving ahead.
Yeah, that the kind of startup mentality, great stuff. This is great. This is great. Let me know where people let the audience know where they can find you online. Anything you want me to link to in the show notes or promote or anything like that.
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely. So our website at the Beacon is buckscountybeacon.com. That's buckscountybeacon.com. And my email is Daralyse, Daralyse at buckscountybeacon.com. And I would say just go there. There's links to all our social media, you know, bios and stories and articles. And if anyone has any questions, they're welcome to drop me a line. I'd love to engage.
great. I'll link to all of that, and I'll link to your LinkedIn also because that's where we met.
Perfect. Yeah.
I
Thank
like
you so
that
much. And thank
platform
you for
for
reaching out to me. I
yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. And I'm really grateful for your audience, your viewers, and your listeners. And yeah, I hope to hear from people.
Cool, awesome. All right, thanks, Daralyse. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much, Paul.
Bye.